Hi there, and welcome to the Skylight Books author reading series. If you'd like to learn more about us and our many upcoming author events, please visit skylightbooks.com, where you can browse our inventory, buy books, and join our Friends with Benefits Club. You can also follow us on Twitter, Tumblr, and Facebook. To speak to a real live bookseller, please call 323-660-1175. Thanks for your support, and enjoy.
Please welcome Graham Chaffee and Sammy Harkham.
Hi.
Thank you. Oh, so I guess the benefit and the negative of having a cartoonist interview you is that most of my questions are going to be kind of inside baseball type things.
Okay.
You know, so just to get started, I'm curious, like, there was a big gap between your books in the 90s. Was Big Wheel the last one?
No, Big Wheel was the first one, and then there was another one like right away afterwards called The Most. It was a short story collection,
right,
called The Most Important Thing, and then I had a little piece in Drawn and Quarterly, and then nothing for like 15 years or something.
And what led to Big Wheel, or Big Wheels? Sorry.
I had always just kind of wanted to do comics. I just thought, you know, when I went into Art Center, I was interested in comics, and I had been kind of toying with the idea the whole time I was at school, and I was messing around with a bunch of stories, and Big Wheels was the one that, I mean, I sent a bunch of Xeroxes to Fantagraphics in '93, and Big Wheels was the fragment of Big Wheels that I sent was what they bit on and said, well, can you finish this? We're maybe interested in that. And so I finished it, and that, you know.
Were you reading comics at the time, or were you not even engaged with?
No, I was reading comics.
Yeah.
You know, like all the highlights of the 80s and 90s. I was, you know, the Batman Returns and the Watchmen and stuff, you know.
Right.
All the things that everyone was all about in the mid 80s and early 90s.
Mm-hmm. And so you finished Big Wheels, you went straight into the second book, and then after that there's about, what would you say, 15 years?
Something like that. It's actually not, it took me 5 years to make Good Dog.
Right.
So the apparent gap is not is bigger than the actual amount of time.
Did it feel like you were did you feel that gap, or was it always a sense that you were working constantly throughout that time?
I had thought I was done with comics, and then
was it the response? I don't know how the book was, how the books were.
I think they just disappeared. It was before the internet.
Right.
So there was no way to really know.
But I found them in Australia, so that means they had some sort of reach, you know.
Yeah,
like I found them as a teenager, and I loved them.
I started tattooing, and I was into that, and I was just focused on tattooing for a number of years. And
did you learn how to tattoo after drawing comics, or was that something you were doing concurrently?
No. I did the comics, and then I was doing tattooing, and then I got back into comics in 2007.
You started
when I started Good Dog.
Right.
So it was like, I don't know, like 12 years or something between the last thing that was published and when I started doing it again. But then it was another 4 or 5 years doing the book before it was print.
With Good Dog, was that when you come up with an idea like that, where almost every character is an animal, is there any hesitancy of like, oh man, I'm now going to have to learn how to draw dogs so well?
No, I didn't think it was going to be as big as it was. I thought it was going to be like a short story or something that I would just do for fun, and it would just be Xeroxed or whatever.
Sure.
And then it grew, but as it grew, I was just kept drawing the stuff. I didn't really have any pressure about drawing it. I wasn't very serious about it when I started. I was just doing it, and then it just it ballooned into a whole thing.
Right. And so for it to have and to hold, it feels like it feels like in some ways a leap into new territory, but also sort of retaining a lot of the same sort of visual ideas, and the world feels very familiar.
Well, it's all my stories up through this one take place in the same city, like the Big Wheel.
Do you want to flip through some pages so people can see?
Sure. The city that the
Just
Big
a-
Wheels took place in, and this story, and the piece I did for Drawn and Quarterly, and Good Dog, all take place in the
What
same
issue? Just because I'm curious, what issue of Drawn and Quarterly did that story?
I can't
run on?
remember.
Okay, just
It's-
for the completists.
It was. I can find it. I can find that for anyone who wants to know. I can email you with the edition of Drawn and Quarterly that I had a story in.
I'll email you.
It's a story about the couple that own the billiards parlor that's in Good Dog,
Right.
and that make a cameo here. They were also in the Big Wheels. They got their start in the Big Wheels, and that billiard parlor got its start in the Big Wheels. And it's the city is the main character continuity thing, and it's not a real city. It's not New York. It's just a made up town. It's meant to be New York-ish, but I didn't want to be constrained by the actual geography of New York.
I found that really interesting because I think that's a really hard thing to do, to not just go like, I'm going to set it in this specific place in this specific. I mean, you do. It is set in a specific time.
Yeah,
but I thought that was really interesting.
It's October of 1962,
Right?
Because I needed a news broadcast to be playing in the background of like one of the panels, like the first panel of the first page of the book.
Right.
And I was looking for vintage news broadcasts, and I found one from the Cuban Missile Crisis that had, I could hear the audio of it, and I'm like, all right, fine, this takes place in October of 1962, and I just got all my news, there's stuff on the TV and news that happens during the course of the book, and it's all just from this one broadcast, and it's about Khrushchev and Kennedy and stuff in Algiers and some murderer that didn't have his death penalty commuted by the governor, stuff like that. It was just all, and then I just snuck in my own fake comic book news to,
Right.
flush out the broadcast. But it's all, like, the time and place of this is just based on what I was able to find from my research.
Right. And so I know you have some images of reference. Should we go to those now?
yeah,
Is that okay?
No problemo.
Because I was curious about that.
See,
Like how much.
This is the billiard hall from the Big Wheels. Like, this goes back to 1993. And then the dog in it goes back to, whoops, I'm going so fast. These are my two main characters for this book. Anthony Quinn and the young Livia Soprano. I don't remember the actress's name. She's like in 5 seconds of The Sopranos in like one episode. But it doesn't matter. It's not her face. It's just her overall look. That woman is like my main character. And I wasn't copying her.
It's more of like a spark. I
it's
totally
just-
get that.
She's
I
just
totally
who I
understand.
thought of when I was like drawing the character, and then the facial character for my guy was basically Anthony Quinn, and
Right.
you can see if you look at the cover of the book that it's him.
Was it useful to like watch Anthony Quinn movies just when you'd forget about it for a year or two and then go like, it's on TCM?
It was more that the reason I use celebrities in my book is because if you need a picture of Anthony Quinn laughing or smiling or frowning or yelling or whatever, you can find one. But if it's just somebody that you know personally, then you got to take a million photos, and it's really hard. It's hard, But I can find a million pictures of Anthony Quinn with a variety of facial expressions anytime, and so I just cast my story with all these
It's interesting
actual
because
celebrities because there's so much.
you can
photo
always,
reference to them.
usually, not always, but usually you can tell when cartoonists are like copying or using a lot of reference, but your work doesn't have any of that sort of stiffness. It all feels like it's your language, it's your drawing. It's really interesting to see how like it really is specific like that.
Well, I would make my version of him, and then it would be kind of like, well, this is my Anthony Quinn, and then it just became that, and he would go away a little bit from the original reference and just be
Right.
whoever he was.
Right.
There's a few cameos, like the two cops in my book are John Lurie and Tom Petty, character actors. Here they are in the book.
Nice.
And then there's cameos, Red Fox and Abe Vigoda and Don Knotts. These are like small, I just sort of threw them in there because why not,
Sure.
And it's like I said, it's just easier to find a ton of pictures of stuff like that. And I wanted to talk about photo reference because this is how I draw a police station without photo reference. I needed this big shot of a police station, and I just drew it kind of out of my head, and I made up all these features, and I drew kind of a boxy police car. And I looked at it and I thought, God, that's really not worth a full page. Let me redraw it. And so I came up with this one. And this is, based on, we're having technical difficulties. The images are all out of order. It's based on this. And this is an actual police station, and it just the difference between this guy and this guy is why you should take your time and maybe find some photos to use when you're trying to draw stuff. Some other examples are the Terminal Bar in Times Square. This got torn down in the 80s, but it was an amazing looking bar, and here's my copy of it. And I got stuff from everywhere. Here's a painting by Millard Sheets. This is in LACMA. It's a painting of Angel's Flight, from above. This is where the Broad is now, right? So this is like from the balcony of the Broad, and then I copied it here. If I could have found a way to put my character twice, I would have. I was looking to think, well, could there be like a glass door that's open and you see her reflection on it, and it just became too complicated, and I didn't go that far. But
is that because you liked the original composition?
Yeah, I liked it so much. I liked this so much. I wanted to get it as close to it as I could.
It's really funny because you have a lot of scenes where it's two people at that apartment.
Yeah,
you could have done it.
I just wanted her by herself. I didn't want her with the guy.
It was more the feeling of it. Yeah.
And then this is just to show where I would just get stuff from all over. Here's like kind of a Levittown house that became the one of the characters' houses in the book, and then a lot of stuff like this. It's all about finding stuff that's behind buildings and like stuff that you would not, you need to draw the back of a store. What is that?
I had to do a scene recently where it was the interior of a police station, like where the booking takes place.
Yeah,
and it was so hard to find reference. I mean, there are things that you would think there's a lot of photographs of.
You just got to watch like a lot of cop shows and then freeze frame stuff.
Right.
I did a lot of I didn't put them in here, but there's tons of police station material that I have, drawings of police station, and then also newsrooms. Newsrooms and police stations look the same. It's just a whole bunch of desks in a great big room, and there's like clocks and stuff on the wall, and I used a lot of stuff like that.
But your stuff feels very specific. I mean, it feels very early '60s. So it's you can't just look at anything. It's
I was all vintage newsroom, vintage police station, vintage New York police station, blah blah blah. I did a lot of stuff like this where I would find characters too, like this guy. This dude sitting on the steps became this guy, and you can see he's going down into the cafe that this other guy's coming out of, and I just liked his haircut and his glasses, his sunglasses, and he became a character, for like 3 pages, and then here's this like Better Homes and Gardens kind of Life magazine thing became this guy's living room. And the cars in the book are real cars, like the main characters drive a Ford Interceptor, and the getaway car is a Buick Roadmaster.
Nice.
What that is. And the dog book had like, I don't know, like I had a half a dozen pictures of dogs that I used to kind of get dog reference, and then 2 or 3 pictures of factories and stuff, and that was it. Everything else I just drew out of my head, and it didn't matter. But for this one,
it wasn't easier one way or the other.
It's way easier to not have to look stuff up. Sure, like the dog book, just drawing generic apartment buildings and pointy-topped houses and fire hydrants and stuff out of my head was way faster than finding real cityscapes and real buildings, but also less interesting. And I kind of raised the bar for this one in terms of the realism, I think, and there was big shots of like guys tailing people in cars and aerial shots of cities and stuff, and I just needed more photos. So that's where that comes from.
What's the development of a strip like this when you know? Because I'm sure when you start thinking about it, you're like, oh, this is going to be big. Unlike a Good Dog, you know from the outside that like this is going to probably be 100 pages at least.
Yeah, I was thinking Good Dog was 90-something pages, and I thought, well, this will be longer than that. This will be like 150, and it just kept going and kept going. And
but where does, are you writing anything down? Are you going scene by scene? I'm just curious what the process is of like, are you starting with a handful of visual ideas or narrative ideas?
This one started with a plot. Like, I was like, I want to do a noir story, and I need a plot. And it's just like, this guy finds out his wife's cheating on him, and he's going to like... Originally, he was gonna
no spoilers,
rob a bank. Like she's cheating on him with a banker, and he was gonna like rob a bank, and he was gonna use that robbery to kill the bank manager, and that way he could get his revenge on this guy without anyone suspecting there was a personal motive, because it just would have been during the robbery. Plus, he gets a bunch of money. And then everything goes wrong. That was like, okay, I got my noir plot. And then it changed and evolved, and things shifted and
as you're working on actual pages.
I would be like, this scene doesn't seem right. He's not going to do that. He wouldn't. Once you've written a whole bunch of stuff, then you know the character, and you're like, he would never do that. He would do this. And so it changed. And this one just started with a plot, and I did it, and I kind of mapped out, he's got to find out if she's cheating, he's got to do some investigation, he's got to plan this robbery, and he's got to get his team together, and then you have to do the robbery, then all the cops investigate, and then there's a big denouement at the end. And I kind of had the islands on that atoll of events mapped out in my head, and then I would just start at the beginning and just write scenes and just try to fill them up, and then I would go back and add more scenes as more stuff occurred to me.
Sure.
There was this one scene, I'm just going to go back a whole bunch to the beginning here. This scene here, where he's just found out that his wife's been lying to him. Like, she needed the car to go play bingo at the Catholic church, and he found out that she hadn't been there. And he comes home, he worked all night, it's a night shift, and she's in bed, and she's got to get up in the morning. And he comes home, and he's going to ask her about, well, how is bingo, and she kind of wakes up just enough to shut him down and go back to sleep. She's not taking any crap from him. And this scene and the scene that followed it, where there's a little struggle for the kind of moral advantage between the two of them, became the scene where I figured out what the book was about, which isn't about bank robberies or anything, but about their relationship, their crappy marriage. And she became a real character because up until this point, she was just the cheating wife. She was just a reason for him to want to do all this stuff. She didn't really have any dreams of her own or anything. She wasn't a real person. But when she wakes up and tells him to shut up and go to sleep, she became a real person. And then when I expanded this scene, and they have this back and forth, and she winds up getting the moral advantage and kind of winning, because he has it at the beginning. Like, he knows that she's cheated on him, and he's got the moral advantage, and he's using it, and then she turns it around, and it winds up being a different thing. And that scene is where she got her own agency, and she became a real person, and I became more interested in their relationship, and then I had to expand on that throughout the rest of the book. I had to intersperse my heist plot with stuff about her and stuff about them, and it became much more about their relationship.
Because she's a very tough character. She's a really dark character, but you kind of feel for her.
Well, and she became my favorite character in the book.
Right.
It went from being about him and what he was.
But you never softened her in all that, though, which I thought was great.
Well, and I wasn't gonna. Susan, what's the movie where the woman doesn't get soft?
I like how there's just one movie.
Back to it. All right. Well, it's a noir movie, and it's a heist movie, and it's from black and white days. And there's a female character, like a Bonnie and Clyde type team up, and she never pulls back. She never pulls her punches. She never softens up. She never surrenders to femininity. She's like, I think she's using children as like a human shield at one point. Like, she never softens up. She never lets go. They never said, we'll make her weak. She's the weakness, and that's why their whole. She never does. Gun crazy.
Oh, it's a great movie.
And I was thinking about that the whole time I was working with her, that she's not gonna. She doesn't lighten up. She doesn't soften up. She doesn't give an inch. She knows what she wants, and she's going after it. And she's not amoral. She's cheating on her husband, but lots of people cheat. It doesn't mean they're awful people. But she gets pushed into this position, and they both hate each other. It's like a bad marriage, But it was working as a bad marriage until all this started. Like, they had.
How far into the book were you at that point? Because
here,
like when you got to that scene where because it doesn't sound like you're working totally.
I wasn't. Well, okay, I'm gonna go back. With Good Dog, I wrote the whole thing as a script. I laid out the whole thing in a sketchbook, all my darks and lights and everything, and then I did the finished art, and then I went back and added like 30 more pages because my publisher told me it wasn't big enough, and I needed to add like another third. Mm-hmm. And but I did the whole book 3 times, right? In this one, I felt there was no way I was going to do that. It was too boring, and it's disheartening to have to go back and do stuff again. So I would write a few scenes, and I would lay them out and ink them, and then I would write some more. So it was only just like a chapter ahead of myself.
I think that's the ideal way of working.
I would just do it. I would be making the finished art as I went along, and then I would go back when I had to add more scenes. And there's stuff in the beginning of the book that got put in at the end, And if you are super anal retentive and are looking at the stylistic changes, you can see the newer art. You can see a progression from like the way the characters are drawn at the beginning to the way they're drawn by the end, and then you can also see where the end type drawings got shoved back in at the beginning. If you're really on it, for all the scholars of my work out there that are really pursuing this, you can do that.
Well, let's see. What else do you have on there? You have some other things that I wouldn't mind seeing. I saw you had some bank robber pictures.
Oh, yeah. They're out of order. This was like stuff that just influenced me.
Yeah. For this specific story? Or just in general?
And for this
because
story.
I do find that artists have like, there's sort of a very limited wellspring that they constantly go back to.
Yeah, no, that's true for me.
And I think that's true of like every good artist in a way. They're always kind of like digging into the same
all my stories are
things.
Basically going to be this.
This image is like.
I always wanted to do. I've been in love with noir film and stuff forever, and this is Ouija, right? Mm-hmm. And it's not that he's a great photographer and it's all the composition so much as it's just the feeling that you get from his photos just gets in your brain, and that's just in there.
And I do think like it's very specific, and very few cartoonists, especially modern cartoonists, can tap into that feeling. I think it's amazing how well you do that.
Just back in there. Well, I watch a bunch of black and white
movies.
No,
but it's your artwork. It's a lot of things that all make it work. You're getting a compliment, so just take it and just feel like
This particular picture is what's running in my mind the whole time I'm making the book. Mm-hmm. This is a scene from The Friends of Eddie Coyle. Mm-hmm. And to me, a comic book is a movie. Like, if I could make a movie, I'd make a movie, but I can't. And so I make a comic book.
That.
Well, it costs like $1 million to make a movie, and you got to have a crew and all this stuff. I can just do a comic book by myself, right? Like I can just sit down and draw.
But it sort of negates like a lot of aspects of what you do. But okay.
Well, but to me, I'm making a movie. It's and there's rules to like you never see a character thinking anything in my comics. Almost zero. Do you hear anyone's thoughts?
You break that rule sometimes, though.
Very rarely. And if there is someone thinking, they're thinking a picture, like there'll be a coffee cup in their head, and I do it because I need to show that they want a cup of coffee and they're going into a place, and but I never have someone saying, what if anyone found out my secret identity? Like, that never happens. There's almost never narrative voiceover. It's just people doing stuff and saying things, and it's all about showing it, not saying it. Right. And so it's all about camera angles and moving, and I'm thinking about any scene I'm writing, I'm thinking about, well, the camera's going to be here, then it's going to go around behind them here, and then we're going to have a close-up, and then we pull back, and then we're going to get an aerial shot and all this stuff. And I'm thinking of it as a movie. And the kind of movie that I'm thinking of are these little obscure noir films from the 70s. John Cassavetes, or this one, the Friends of Eddie Coyle, or, less obscure, The French Connection, stuff like that. There's like the Charlie Varick. They're just these kind of like, there's a feeling about 70s noir. It's kind of bleak, and it's small, and it's not about big spectacular things with a lot of big horn section doing crazy dun-dun-dun music.
Sure, it's very unadorned in a lot of ways.
It's
all
really spare.
Real locations, and it's a lot of regular people.
And that's what I'm thinking about, and that's where this book and the next book that we're working on now are all based on these kind of like small 70s noir films, like little.
What about crime fiction? Do you read a lot of books and stuff?
Yeah, tons.
Who's your favorite? Name top 3.
Well, the obvious ones, like James M. Cain, Raymond Chandler, and Dashiell Hammett are my 3 favorite go back tos. But there's an endless
I would think
list.
it would be like Thompson, Goodis, like the guys who are more like psychological, and they're more. I feel their work feels very personal.
Well, but that's like when I'm reading a noir book is not the same as when you're watching a movie. And like I said, these are movies, and so my what I'm going for emotionally in my books is the feeling, that kind of bleak Get Carter feeling from these like late 60s, 70s noir movies, which is a different thing than when you're reading a noir book like The Maltese Falcon or The Big Sleep or whatever.
Sure.
I'm not doing that. I'm not doing those. I love them, but that's not. And I would feel too self-conscious. Like, I don't feel self-conscious about jumping into this. But I would feel dumb making a private eye gumshoe thing with like a dame as a kid. You know what I mean? Like,
I don't
like
mean.
I was trying to,
I don't
if
mean
I
to
was
bring them
trying
up
to
as
get into that world that's been tread so much that I didn't want to explore it anymore, and I wanted to do this noir is more interesting to me.
Interesting. Cool.
So
let's see what else. What are some other big references?
Yeah, we have
big
to go all the way to the end. Other things that influence me are Edward Hopper, because again, bleak, like people that are like together but totally not together, and this is their whole marriage right here. Is this painting is like the marriage of my main couple, and that kind of stillness and not communicating is like a big thing for me. I've always liked Hopper. And Robert Crumb's insistence on putting every telephone wire and mailbox and street sign and parking meter into a scene. While I don't go this distance, I'm always thinking about this picture when I'm drawing my stuff and how important it is. It's sort of like the Bruegel.
It's the density, or like, do you like the moral component of it, which is
both. Right. Both. A lot of it is that there's all this stuff that you don't even think about is around you, above your head, and all around you all the time, and it's important to like put that junk in there. And that's why when I was going back, like if I had to draw this out of my head, I would never have that little ladder, and I would never have the air conditioning unit, and I wouldn't know what would be written on the side of the building, and it wouldn't occur to me to do this little rubber bumper on the thing where the car backs up. And I needed the photo of this to give me those little clues of mundane stuff, just wires and
I know the feeling.
Vents and all these door handles on a car, all this kind of stuff.
Because it sort of suggests a lot more of like the feeling in the air, moment, the time of day.
You got to have all that stuff, and you don't have to put it all in, but you need to put in enough of it that till you feel like, all right, I got the feeling I want, and then I can be done.
Now, what about comic book influences? I mean, you've talked a lot about film, but
Probably my
comics that
biggest comic influence visually is a guy named Dave Mazzucchelli, who I don't know what he's doing now, but the stuff that I was reading in the 80s and 90s, he was doing stuff with Frank Miller, with Batman, and then he did this experimental thing called Rubber Blanket, which I don't know if you read, but that was really cool. He's got a kind of a loose black and white, kind of cartoony,
sort
but
of
also
peaks
realistic.
with City of Glass.
Yeah, that City of Glass was cool.
Yeah.
And so he's like a big one. And then the Hernandez brothers, they did Love and Rockets, are a big one for me. The black and white compositions are really big for me.
Right.
And there's a million. I mean, there's so many cartoonists I admire. The list is endless. Crumb obviously is big with all the urban details.
But I mean, do you pull out Mazzucchelli's books or Love and Rockets?
No, it's just influenced how my own wrist developed. Like, it was more like I read them and admire them, and I don't look at them anymore, but then I think about drawing kind of like some of those things. I didn't ever copying them.
Right.
But I haven't looked at a Mazzucchelli comic in, I don't know, 20 years, but they're in my mind,
Sure. So do you want to tell us, before we finish, a little bit about what you're working on? I think you've been posting some stuff online.
Yeah, sure.
So why don't we tell them as a little preview of what's coming?
The next one is another noir, and I finally got out of this made-up town that I've been putting everything in, and I moved to Los Angeles, and I'm doing a 1970s. I moved it ahead 10 years and put it in LA, and I also start using gray in my compositions.
Well, because it's a little bit in this. You do have those gray flashback
the chapter
moments,
headings,
which
in
look
this book
beautiful,
have gray, and that encouraged me to go ahead and say, well, I can do the whole book that way.
It's a big leap. I mean, in my mind, things like that are scary.
Well, it makes
you're adding an instrument to the band. It's like freaky.
Well, and it made it hugely easier to compose images. Having a third color.
Oh, interesting.
Made it so much easier when you got like people in a dark room, and there's shadows.
It's so weird. I think the opposite.
Gray, if I could put gray in there, it makes it so much. That's just it's a whole other color. I can be like, I can have like, here's all the people in the background. I just paint them all gray, and they're in the background, and I can have my.
It's because you're a good artist,
or like in black and white.
Yeah. For other artists, that would be like, oh my god, I need to master this whole other component.
And it's also been helpful, and this is stupid, but it's super helpful with my African American characters to not have to make them solid black.
I love the way you draw black people.
Is a huge thing. To be able to like to light them in a way that
they're beautiful cartoon characters.
Yeah, but try putting one outside at night, and then it's hard to draw. Like, it's not. Right. Having gray makes it so I can do so much more subtle stuff, and it just gives me that much more.
Cool.
It skin tones and clothing and buildings. Oh my God, all these black bricks. Now I could do a building that could have gray bricks, and it's not.
It's exciting.
It's just nice to have the extra option.
Cool. And what's the title?
The working title is Billy Bonnie, but I don't know if I'm going to stick with that. That's the main character's name.
And how far are we along?
Like 40 pages in.
Awesome.
I think.
Cool.
Something like that. It's probably going to be another 200 pages like this one, so I'm almost.
Not such a long wait. That's going to be 3 books, one after another.
Yeah, only 4 or 5 years between them. Yeah.
Hey, that's better than a lot of people.
I'm trying to go faster. I'm trying to.
Awesome.
Like this one was 200 pages in 4 years, and Good Dog was 100 pages in 5 years. So I doubled my output.
You know what? One last question, and then we can see if anyone has any questions here. But do you think
no one has any questions?
Do you think your tattoo work, the craft that goes into that, the aesthetics that go into that, play into your personal work?
It's a limitation. Tattooing means that I cannot draw as freely and expressively as I'd like, because I'm constantly trying to make everything super clean and super, so you can see all the part. Like I'm really big on, like, it's really hard for me to draw a shadowy room where people are just hard to see. Mm-hmm. Like, I have to make it really clear who is where and all the, and that's all from tattooing. It's the anal retentive, clean, perfect quality that you need for tattoo art is working against me in my comics from being able to express myself.
So do you feel like you're unlearning aspects of drawing when
yeah, just trying to be livelier with the brush and more expressive and less uptight with the drawings is a huge struggle.
Be interesting if that and then you go back to tattooing and then you're making really messy tattoos on people.
It's a total thing. Like, it's a total juggling act every time. Like, I try to bring some of this back into tattooing and do tattoos that are less uptight, and also I'm trying to be less graphically restricted, and tattooing doesn't help at all. That's the opposite,
Interesting. So. And do you, again, last question, I keep saying that, but how do you manage your time? Do you have set times for drawing comics and sort of either writing, whatever you'd call writing?
Yeah.
Or is it just when you can find it?
It's where I can find it, and it's generally slow days at the tattoo shop.
Wow.
Like, I've got a day at the tattoo shop where I'm going to be there 12 hours, and I got like one appointment or something. Then I got a few hours I can just
It's great that you can
on.
plug in like that.
I
I
can draw.
Everyone with day jobs, it's hard to go from like whatever bullshit you're dealing with and then going like, okay, I just need to figure out this scene. That's a really difficult thing.
I got lots of time at the Purple Panther. There's nothing happening, hours at a time. There's plenty of, and I putter around and I do everything I can to not get any work done, and then I've checked all my emails and Instagram a bunch of times and done the books and done the drawing for my tattoo that I got to do later, and then I play a video game, and then I can sit down and get some work done. And I have just enough time on a slow day at the tattoo shop that I can actually make a whole comic book. I can't really do anything at home. There's too many distractions. I got to walk the dog. I got to do whatever. Go shopping, do something.
Right.
And I can't really get into it at home. But at the shop, when there's nothing else to do, I can get some.
Awesome. Are there any questions from the audience? Is there?
You doing all this by hand as well?
You mean as a
brush and?
Oh yeah. I don't know how to do anything on a computer. It's all big.
I like that.
Big, cool. 15 by 20 pages and a ruler and I use a mechanical pencil. This mechanical pencil, and then I used a dippy brush with a little ink pot forever, and I graduated to a brush pen.
Graduated?
Yeah, like I moved forward technologically to a brush pen.
You're so weird. Was it as good? I don't use a brush, but I thought people are really like into their sable hair. Like,
yeah, they are, but that's dumb.
Winsor Newton series.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. It's all bullshit.
Right.
That's quality.
I mean,
for brush.
I will say there are like Charles Burns doesn't give a shit about his brushes. Chris Ware buys the cheapest brushes.
And those guys have the cleanest work.
Right.
Ever.
So it is kind of bullshit. But growing up, everyone's like, you got to spend $80 on the nice brush.
That's because they feel like having their tools will make them better artists, and you should be able to draw with mud on your thumb. That's all you need. And the brush pen is better because I don't have to dip it. It's faster, and it doesn't dribble ink all over. Like, you don't have accidents with it. And it works fine. And I couldn't tell the difference. And
is it archival ink? You probably don't even know.
No idea.
Right, no idea.
And
of course, who cares?
It would last longer than me, right? Like, it's gonna.
I don't know.
I'm pretty sure the brush pen ink will last longer than 100 years, especially if it's not just out hung up on a wall somewhere. It's just in a folder in a flat file or something. It doesn't matter
for now.
And it's all digitally reproduced anyway. But it's just faster and more efficient. And I've shown people, like, here's the regular brush, here's the brush pen. Can you see any difference? And no one could.
Right.
And so if people couldn't see a stylistic change halfway through the book when I started using the brush pen, then
I'm good to go. Yeah.
And then the new book, I'm still using the brush pen, but I'm using regular brushes for all the grays because I don't have a brush pen for gray. I don't know how to do that. I know that
we'll go to the art supply shop.
Yeah, we have to find
blow
the
your
right
mind.
stuff. But I got like 3
There's definitely a gray.
I know there's gray ink, but I have to, the brush pen didn't the cartridges.
Oh, because you need the variant. Because with the water, you can do a lot of variation there. It's very painterly.
It is.
Right? The new style must be...
It is, in a bad way.
Right,
It's hard,
because
I just want to get a nice, clean, gray background, and I'm like filling in around other people, and it's blotchy and splotchy, and then I wind up having to make it extra brushstrokey on purpose so that it looks like it did it on purpose. When I was actually trying to make it nice and smooth, but it won't. And, everything is an accident that you try to make look like you did on purpose.
So it's called style, right?
Yeah.
Limitations
and
mistakes.
And that is what defines an artist's style, right? The visible evidence of the artist trying to struggle with something and come to terms with like his own limitations, and then whatever the final output of that is, that's style. Otherwise, you just have something visually perfect that's kind of boring. It'll be like Boogerow or something,
right.
One of those Norman Rockwell where it's like perfect.
Well, you
but who
start
cares?
seeing that, right? Like you start seeing, especially like you start seeing as cartoonists get older, they just want to draw perfectly, and so a lot of the charm of their early work is often gone because they're
unless they
looking for
get
that perfect
palsy
craft.
or lose their eyesight like Charles Schultz, and then they're just drawing these like wiggly weird things, and it's kind of more interesting,
Right.
I like it when Billy.
We could all
draws
be so
the
lucky.
Family circus.
Yeah.
Let your kid go.
Right. All right. Any other questions from the audience?
Everyone here is like a friend of mine. They don't have any questions.
Right. They can bother you later.
Oh yeah, in the back.
Can you talk about the wells, like the sources where you find your images from, like how you decide which image is an image you want to use and which image is an image you don't want to use?
For this particular book,
Well, and of course, connected to that is like, do you start with reference first that you want to use, or are you going like, you've already thumbnailed the scene?
In my
and you're
mind,
like,
in my mind, I've already shot the scene. I know what it looks like in my mind. It's like they're going to pull up to this station.
So it's just a matter of finding the
and
right
then I just
building.
look for that thing. And like for this, I found. I
Point
don't
to
even
this
know what
one.
I was looking for. The back of a building.
Point to that. So
And then the Hammond's Candy Express was another thing that I found, and I put them together. And then I had to find a police car. I had to find whatever kind of car that is. I don't remember what the police are driving. Does anyone know that car? George?
It's a Ford Fairlane.
You don't know where that is. But it's a real car, and it's a real van, and it's a real building, and then if you were to zoom in, the two cops are character actors from movies and stuff, and then the only made up people are the guy loading the truck and the guy with a clipboard in his hand. It's more that I just kind of know what I'm looking for, and then I'm just like endlessly searching on the internet to find the right thing. And sometimes you'll see something and you're like, whoa, that's a cool motel. I'm going to put that in my comic book. And then it's bookmarked in your brain, and you're like, oh yeah, I need a motel for this scene. I remember collecting a few. I'm going to use that really awesome one that I found. And I was on a trip to Sequoia, and I found like an abandoned car repair shop that wound up becoming a building in the movie, in the book, and I just been saving it, for when I knew I was going to use it at some point, and I just kept it there, or I was like, that'll be perfect for this scene, and I just mentally remembered that was something I wanted to use, but mostly it's just I kind of had an idea in my mind about where the scene was supposed to be and how it should feel, and I just copied that, and I just then you just go on the internet and you just look for a million things.
Right.
It's no special thing. I'm just Google searching vintage whatever, And the 1960s in this book are all the whole 1960s, because you can't say 1962 New York street scene. You just say New York 1960s, and then you just say that looks fine, and you put it in there. Mad Men was a big. I found a lot of the clothing and stuff that comes from Mad Men. A lot of the interior design comes from Mad Men. It's like Don Draper's apartment, and then you find the furniture and the stuff, because it's not necessarily easy to find like a swanky Manhattan apartment interior from the 60s. That's too many keywords. I just wrote Don Draper's apartment, and there's like a million pictures. And then you can say, how about that clock? How about that carafe? How about that coffee table? And just start putting stuff together. So TV shows are huge. Columbo and stuff. Just any kind of vintage TV show is an endless source of freeze frame stuff for people's outfits. The new book is all set in the 70s, and I'm using Columbo a lot for clothing and hairstyles and cars and LA skyline in the 70s and that kind of thing. And I'm also driving around, for this book, because it's in LA, I'm driving around looking for older neighborhoods that have essentially unchanged. There's going to be a lot in the valley because we just moved to the valley, and there's a great the corner of Van Ness and Van Owen hasn't changed since 1980. I'm pretty sure, and there's going to be a lot of my new book is going to be taking place down that version of the street, then down that from all four angles from the intersection, maybe different parts of the city, because it's all this stuff from the valley that hasn't changed, and I can use it to be my LA noir buildings and palm trees and bar signs and stuff. A lot of parts of LA you can't go down on Melrose and find the 70s. You can't go on Sunset and find the 70s. You got to look a lot harder. You have to go way out in the edges of town to find the stuff that hasn't been updated. So that's my new thing right now, is driving around. And like Susan's been like, I saw this great coffee shop, or I saw this great bank, or whatever. We got to go take pictures of it, where it's the right building. So it's all, I'm taking my own reference photos a lot now for this one because it's in LA.
Cool. Okay. Any more questions? Are we good? Everybody's ready to buy this book? Get it signed?
Yay. Okay.
Awesome. Thanks, Graham.
Thank you.
Congratulations on the new book. It's awesome.
You've been listening to the Skylight Books author reading series. Don't forget, you can listen to this and all our other great podcasts at skylightbooks.com. Thanks again for stopping by, and we hope to see you soon.